I'm in the trenches with you guys. I hope you hear me. I'll talk about all the different areas of how I keep myself organized with juggling all these different worlds, positions. I'm even stepping into now a little bit of the worship department side at church. So I really hope that you can find something in this class to take away to make yourself a better organizer, leader, builder of people, builder of church and team. So I have this class called Skill of Preparation because I really think it is a skill that can be developed. It's something that it's like a muscle you can work on. Honestly, help get yourself to a place of a routine, system, accountability, so that when you're getting ready to do an event or getting ready to do a service, you feel like you've done all the things to communicate well, you've talked to all the people, and everyone has what they need. So you all know that there's never a lack of events or things going on. I mean, we obviously Sunday to Sunday, we have plenty to do, but even in between the weddings and like I even said, like memorial services or young adults, there's not a lack of things going on that require our attention. Most of the last minute stress-inducing things I found can really be helped by a little bit of extra preparation on the front end, and it requires a level of discipline. No one is going to care as much as you all about things being executed well, especially if you're leading a team. No one's going to drive the ship. It needs you. So even at Bethel, where I have quality, talented people around me, a lot of experts who are really good at what they do, they don't do exactly this. What I bring to the table with this level of advancing and preparation is something that they don't have to think about, which lets them, the experts, do what they do best, and I can just help support them. So even like, Jonah and I work really close together. Jonah's, if he was in here, he'd tell you, like, not the most administrative mind, but I can't mix like Jonah or Chris. But what I can do is set them up for success. When I talk about this preparation, I will maybe call it advancing, which is kind of like a tour word, but it just means getting things dialed before you get to the place that you're going to. So whether it's an event or a class, we're just kind of talking about paving the way, preparing the way, preparation, advancing. So just in case I say that word, you understand what I'm referring to. And then this is something Jonathan Helser, who's one of our artists, says a lot, but preparation really unlocks spontaneity. The way Bethel can do what we do on stage, on platform, on tours, is because we spend a lot of time in the front end getting things really dialed and set up well. So let's talk about the workflow. This is going to be a general workflow, and then I'm going to go into my workflow, but this is kind of like an overview to help you all kind of develop your own. But the first thing we'll talk about is asking the right questions. The second thing, how you're ingesting the information that you're receiving. Information being communication, detail about an event, text messages from your senior pastor, all the things. Number 3, how we're briefing our team. And number 4, how we're creating systems out of the communication that we're developing. Asking the right questions. So this is a list that I made. And again, every church is going to be a little different. But when I'm going into an event, especially a core event at my church or at a conference, I guess, for example, for Bethel, we do like 7 big conferences a year. These would be some of the people that I would be connecting with to find out, hey, what are we doing? So I'll just read them real quick. But senior pastor, obviously, you're not going to be in the room with your senior pastor all the time. When you are in the room, I hope you're absorbing anything he's talking about related to an event or anything that he feels passionate about. You should also take every single note you can. Make sure that you're capturing the vision. The event stakeholder, who usually for us isn't the senior pastor. So in Bethel, obviously Bill Johnson, senior pastor, senior leader, and then we have Chris Valton, the associate senior leader. An event stakeholder for us would be like one of our staff pastors, like Ben Armstrong or Havilah. Like they would be the ones owning the women's conference, like a leadership pastoral standpoint. So that's what the event stakeholder means. Creative director, worship pastor. I know a lot of churches have creative directors nowadays who oversee either production and worship or creative arts and worship and production. There's different layers of that, but I worked at Hillsong for a bit, so we obviously had a creative director. At Bethel, we don't currently have that role, but I do have a worship pastor, so I connect with them on, hey, who's playing? What are we doing? Or what's the thought, I guess, is even a better question. Because obviously when you get close enough, hopefully a planning center, things like that, but what's the thought? Is this going to be, are we talking full band? Or are we talking acoustic set? Presenters. So this for me is any guest speakers coming to an event. What do they need? What kind of mic do they want to use? Do they want to run a keynote from the front of the stage? And then the band and leaders, and this is really where your team, or if you're an engineer, you're really owning, making sure, hey, the band has what they need set up so that when they come to rehearse, we are dialed. So assume that you don't know, even if you think you do, is usually a wise saying. I feel like anytime I assume, and I'm like, no, I know what they're going to do before they do it, is usually the time they'll spin it and they'll be doing something else that I was not prepared for. So always just assume you don't know and ask a lot of questions. One other thing I wrote down is just use past experiences as a roadmap, but don't trust it 100%. Be ready to pivot. So the next step in this process, asking the right questions to the right people, ingesting the information. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we capture what the answers that we got back from the questions that we asked. We obviously get information from a lot of different places as a technical person in the church. I know for me, I get text messages because not a lot of our pastors use email. Text, email, phone calls, meetings, probably the main four. How do I take all that information and compile it into something that's usable? This is where I think a lot of technical leaders, I feel, fall a little short, to be honest. I think we're great at saying thumbs up on the text thread, but not remembering where that text is and how to where it goes. I think this really comes down to you have to take a personal responsibility for what's been said to you. It's not the responsibility of your leader to communicate the way always that you want to be communicated with. So what you can do a better job of is, hey, once I receive this, where is it going so that I can catalog it and get ready to brief my team? So obviously taking notes. Anything that pertains to you and your team, write it down. Even if you're sure you will remember it, always write it down. And then I have some recommended apps that I've used over the years. The one that I use, and I'll talk more about it, is Craft. I am addicted to it. I love it. Drafts is also a really cool little phone app if you're just into like, I need something really quick and easy. Evernote, I think if you've taken notes over the years on your phone, you've probably heard of Evernote, but it's like a notebook style system. Bear's like a really nice writing app, like you're doing long form writing. And MindNode, which is a mind mapper. So it takes notes in a different way visually. So you start with something in the center and then you're kind of branching out. So if you're a real visual person, and all these can work on your phones and they can work on your computers as well. So I encourage you guys to try some of these. And the real key to any of these software that I talk about is it's not the tool, but it's sticking to it, right? It's the discipline of using it. Once you get in the habit of using it, and you have to force yourself sometimes not to, just go in it, writing it down on a Post-it and sticking it somewhere you're going to forget it, or using maybe your Apple Notes, which I think Apple Notes is also a great option. But what I do is I use Apple Notes for like personal, family stuff, and then I'll use something else for work. The next step is, how are we briefing the team? So how does your team best receive information? That's the question you need to ask yourself as the leader. For a lot of us, Planning Center could be a go-to. It doesn't work for everybody. I've, in the past, used some other apps, Basecamp being one. It lets you have a couple different areas of communicating to your team, one being like a message board, and then you can link Google Documents into it. Some of these actually cost money. Obviously, Planning Center, as you all know, does. Basecamp does as well. But the goal is to have a communication tool that gives details to your team and allows for real-time response and modification. So at Hillsong Church, when I worked there, we used Planning Center, and we used a lot of custom templates and printouts and the ability to obviously go in there, modify, reprint, give it to the whole team quickly. That was pretty important. Basecamp wouldn't really work for that, but we're kind of in like a new era of everyone really has a mobile device now that can access these different apps. And I love the idea of real-time feedback. So if you're changing something, they're seeing it real time and not having to do printouts. But yeah, the goal is that team updates, team roster, run of show, schedules, event overviews, creative item overviews, like anything that is used to communicate information to your team falls into some system or software that your whole team knows and is bought into. So here's a few lists. I've mentioned two of them. Planning Center, Basecamp,